Big welcome to the Young Hearts Run Free podcast. Neil, how are we doing this evening?
Very good, thank you. Very good. Yeah, I think I'm almost fully recovered.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that. How long is it actually, just before we get underway? How many days since you completed?
I think I'm on, this is day 12.
Okay.
Since. So.
Well, we'll discover how it's 12 days worth of rich recovery, hopefully, for you very soon. Now, Neil, what we like to do to kick off proceedings is find out a little bit more about our guests and our guests' running story, so to speak. Now, I know we'll get on to speaking about maybe more than usual just about running in this episode, but in terms of your running journey, when did that kind of kick off for you?
So it was right at the back end of 2012. So I was in a bit of a mini comeback into bike racing then in my early 30s, and I was planned to be racing the Scottish Cyclocross Championships that year, which I think was in Strathclyde Park, and I was in the form of my second comeback into bike racing life. Really looking forward to the race, and it was about -10 the night before the race, and the course was frozen solid, and the race got cancelled. So I found myself in early December with a big bag full of fitness and nothing to do with it. There were quite a lot of friends who were involved in triathlon who suggested that I have a go at the Turkey Trot Boxing Day 10K down in Ayr. And so I tried a little bit of running. I could, in training, run about 3 lampposts before I was starting to get a stitch and cramp up and have to walk bits, but turned up for the Boxing Day 10K. Had a really good run, completely destroyed myself, but did quite a good time, and was encouraged then that I might want to have a go at triathlon. Then they had a look at how I swam and suggested that duathlon might be better. So I joined the local running club, which was Kilmarnock Harriers at the time, to try and boost my running for having a go at duathlon in subsequent seasons. And over time, duathlon kind of gave way to more running. So I was road and track running, mostly 5, 10K sort of stuff. A little bit of cross country, and then when we moved to the Trossachs area, I'd pretty much given up on most exercise by that point. But then found the hills and started running again, a little bit heavier and a little bit slower than I'd been on the roads, but really got into it then. And then during lockdown, fell in with a really bad crowd who were doing crazy things up in the hills and big long runs, and one thing led to another, and was encouraged to enter the Ochil Ultra. So did I think it was the second running of the Ochil Ultra that we all did, and again I completely destroyed myself, but quite enjoyed it. And then in the pub one night we were talking about the West Island Way race, and I think there and then in the pub we all entered the West Isle Way race, because it seemed like a good idea at the time. And yeah, it's kind of gone on from there really, and become a bit of a running longer and harder has become a bit of a thing since then.
Destroyed myself is a great tagline for an ultra runner, because we've all got that. We've all got that sort of sadistic side, that turning yourself inside out but enjoying it at the same time. It's
I quite enjoy that sensation after you've raced, where you're just really struggling with everything, but there's something quite positive in that. I think that you're lying down and thinking, I did that to myself, nobody else.
There'll be people listening in going, yeah, that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well described. Thank you.
There'll be people scratching their heads and other people nodding.
Yeah, I've always been able to get myself in that state from a 1500 meter race right through to the West Highway race. I can get to that same point. I just need to condense the misery into shorter periods of time to do it.
Which make a good sales pitch for anybody wondering if they should maybe go into running, eh? It's like, come and have this absolute sufferfest.
It's absolutely brilliant. You'll not be able to walk for days.
We're just on the back of last weekend, race across Scotland, sorry, and
race against Scotland. That's race.
I'm in. I'll defend Scotland.
Race against Scotland. Come
on. But race across Scotland where some magical things happen for people, and also the Devil of the Highlands, which is another. We talk about West Highland Way, so there'll be people who can 100% relate to what you've just described. But you mentioned a bit about cycling. The only time we've spoke about cycling before on the Young Hearts Run Free podcast, and some people have been speaking about being injured. Yeah, and
I hope you were going to say that, Joe.
Yeah, and it's a good way to keep training. It's a good way for that. But you mentioned there about being a cyclist. How has being a cyclist? For me, being a cyclist is all about just getting a sore bum because I didn't cycle enough, right? But how has that helped you shape being a runner?
I think it's brought in that ability to push myself hard. I got good enough as a young man racing to realise that I wasn't good enough to really make it to the top level. But I think the difference in cycling is that generally somebody else administers that pain and suffering to you, unless you're the hammer in the race. Somebody else is creating that pain and suffering because you're having to keep up with them. So yeah, I think cycling definitely taught me that. It taught me a lot about planning and preparation for racing, and I guess to a degree that sense of adventure of heading out the door, to go and explore something, that you drive the car along and you think, I wonder where that road goes, or I wonder where that path goes. And it always used to be, looking at that from a cycling point of view of, I wonder where that road, I'll drive that road to see where it ends up so that I can ride it on my bike sometime, or that trail or whatever. And now it's the same thing, but, looking at it and go, I wonder, could I run to there through here? Is there a way through? So yeah, it kind of created that bit of sense of adventure, I think.
And you cycled, you said no at the top level, you cycled at quite a high level, even representing your country?
Yeah. So I raced for Scotland as a junior and under 23, competed in the 1998 Commonwealth Games. And yeah, that was kind of the point where I had that realization that the really good guys were on a different level, and that either the sacrifice, the personal sacrifice that would be needed to get close to that level was either something I wasn't prepared to do, or something I was maybe a little bit scared to try to do, because if I didn't make it, and the following year I finished university and had the dawning realization that I needed to get a job as well. So
it was a small chink in the window for a moment in time, that you'd have to either seize that opportunity or
absolutely
give over to the rest of life.
And I was quite lucky. So I've only worked in cycling in some form since then. So I can count myself lucky. I've never had a real job. I worked in national team sport with GB Cycling for quite a long time. So I got to see that level of competition and travel around at that level of competition for quite a long time. So satisfied a bit of that itch without having to have the potential for failure, I guess.
Can I ask a bit about pulling on a Scottish vest? We've had some athletes, running athletes, who've represent their country. What does that feel like?
It feels pretty special, actually. Yeah, you do feel a responsibility when you do it. It's a lot more than when you race for your team or as an individual for yourself. Obviously, you put pressure on yourself. You have goals and you have targets. But I think, yeah, when we were racing for Scotland, there was definitely that sense that you were you were representing everybody else that raced bikes in Scotland. You know, you had to acquit yourself very well. So yeah, it was pretty special, and yeah, some of my best memories were, you know, racing in a Scotland jersey, you know, at whatever level, and getting something out of that.
Brilliant. And
no, in a converted washing machine.
No, I did actually. So we live quite close to Graham O'Brien. So in some of his days, we used to take him to some races because he didn't drive. Yeah. And so when I was younger, I did actually race on one of his prototype bikes when he went to the Superman position. So I did actually test out one of his prototype bikes, and I did race in his original kind of tuck position a couple of times, and I think he achieved what he achieved despite his equipment, I would say. You know, he was a genius in terms of the invention, but the execution wasn't always there. The prototype Superman bike that I rode was like wet spaghetti. It was so flexible. But, you know, so I think he's often kind of discredited a little bit, that people think he achieved what he did because of the equipment and the position. But I think actually, just on an engine point of view, he was truly, you know, beyond world class, and actually possibly slightly hindered by the equipment. But, you know, he made it himself, and that was part of his racing. If you put him on a bike that somebody else had made to his design, he didn't have that same connection to it, so he maybe didn't perform quite as well. And, you know, he because when he was on his own bikes, he was representing more than just his racing. He was representing his ingenuity. So yeah,
thanks for that take on.
He's every bit as mad as you think he is. He's absolutely, yeah.
Delighted to hear that. Thank you for that. Thank you for that insight. That was brilliant.
I saw him once at the velodrome at Meadowbank pouring, I think it was a can of Tennent's onto cornflakes to have for his lunch at a training session at the velodrome. You know, he in another life, he would have been an ultra runner rather than a cyclist. It just, the sport hadn't happened when he was there.
Yeah.
Did I not read, or I listened to him one time, and he was the type of snacks that he'd take out on his long runs were snacks that only he would like, so that if somebody else had forgotten something, and he went, you can have my, yeah, and they'd be like, no, I'm all right, and that was his way of getting a one-up on them. So he almost forced himself to like stuff that was absolutely horrible.
Not a bad tactic.
I know. You know? I thought you'd been doing that for a few years now, John. Chip butties on ultras.
Definitely. Can I ask, Neil, the Olympics have just finished.
Yeah.
Do you still take an interest in watching events like that? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. A little bit of mourning just now, because it's the gap between the Olympics and the Paralympics.
Yeah.
There's nothing to watch at breakfast on the TV. And before I worked for GB Cycling, I did a sports science degree, so I take a professional interest in sport in general, so, and have that kind of curse of I can understand how they're achieving something and how they're doing it, but in technical sports I can see how it's done, but I just can't for the life of me do it. You know, the coordination and the skill level, I can break it down, but I just can't perform it.
Yeah, well, that's the hard bit, isn't it?
It is. And there's a reason why I did cyclical sports like cycling and running. It's because I'm hopeless at the other stuff.
John was going to go for the Team GB breakdancing team too.
Well, I mean, that's been shown that there's it's about creativity, isn't it? So
I've got that. I've got that. And if you give me Graham Aubrey's diet intake of a can of Tennent's and some cornflakes, I'd have smashed that, man.
You'll be in there, yeah.
Imaginary gold medal, John. There you go.
Let's bring it back to running. Let's do that.
Let's do that. Now, Neil, you actually got a chance to read your blog that you wrote up for your FKT attempt, and you spoke about, and I think you've already referred to them, a bunch of people that you bumped into during COVID that have sound like formed quite a bit of a band. Informal running club.
Well, I think so. Mike Dillon, who's one of the the founding members were Mike Dillon, who I mentioned in my support crew, Jim Williams, and a lad called Ewan McIntyre, who all live in Calendar, and Ali Morrison as well, and they all kind of got together through being in the area. Mike and Jim both started doing Couch to 5K with the Run Calendar Jog Scotland group, which, you know, people join, they want to do Couch to 5K and they end up doing the West Island Way race, you know, running the whole way, going, I only wanted to do 5K. So it's a bit of an offshoot of that Run Calendar group, called the Happy Little Trees Running Club. They started it during COVID as a way of getting to go out running together legitimately. And I think Mike described it as it's not really a club, it's a state of mind.
I can relate.
So yeah, it's a good little group. A couple of the girls that run with us did the Devil of the Highlands. One of them, it was their, well, in fact, for both of them, is their second ultras. So yeah, we're fostering the daftness, I would say, and bringing more people in. So I met them at the Run Calendar 5K one Saturday morning, and they were going out to do, I think it was Ewan's 38th birthday, so they were going out for a 38-mile run, and I was invited to tag along. So I think I did 25 miles that day. Turned back early and was completely broken from that. I hadn't run that distance in about 6 or 7 years since I'd done a marathon, and it just spawned from there that we were meeting up and doing runs up in the mountains here. I'm
intrigued. I'm intrigued by Happy Little Trees. The name, where did it come from?
It's from Bob Ross, the artist.
Okay.
So it's the Bob Ross philosophy of.
Is that the guy painted on? He's on YouTube.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is YouTube through there, John?
That's YouTube. That was a tree. That was a happy little tree.
Okay, got you.
That's what Bob Ross does. That.
Yeah, he paints his happy little trees. So he's painting happy little runners on the hillside.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like there was a lot of shit happened during that lockdown and COVID and stuff like that, but there's a lot of good legacies being left because of it, and that sounds like another one of them for the
definitely
the wannabe ultra runners, hill runners, and lovers of purgatory and calendar and surrounding area.
And surrounding area, yeah. So there's a loose band come together pretty regularly to run, race, support other people at other
Egg
races.
Egg on.
Exactly. Yeah. So last year there was 4 of us from the group running West Highway race, and I think we had 26 or 27 support crew. Along of ones that were tied to individual runners, to some people just turning up. 2 of the girls, the kind of motto for running ultras is it spawned from the first Oakle Ultra that we did. My wife drove us up to Perth for the start, so she did the horrible early morning shift, taking us to the start, and our parting shot as she left us in the car park in the dark in Perth was "Don't be shit." So that's become the motto. So the girls were up at the fence at Crean-Larich at the top of Glenbogle in the West Highway race last year, with a big bed sheet with that written on it, hanging up on the fence. So it was up from about a kilometre out. You could read it up on the fence. It's a nice bit of halfway motivation for us.
Perfect timing.
Yeah.
Love it. There's another one, isn't there? There's "Don't be a dick." That's another one that's used in ultra running as well. Don't be a dick. So.
Okay, yeah, I mean that's the Scottish Outdoor Access Code, isn't it?
If it's not, it should be.
It should be, yeah.
Definitely. And what about? So we often speak about having a coach. I know you do coaching yourself in the cycling world.
I've not coached since probably about 2010, 2011.
Okay.
So,
but in terms of your running, is it just a case of almost leaning on that support network that you've got?
Yeah, definitely. So I had a good coach at Commonwealth Harriers that was super helpful, James Young. He was really good when I was training with them for the road and track stuff. But yeah, it's been kind of a little bit of my own knowledge, but try and keep it fun, and then help and support from anybody that knows that has experience is useful. Regardless of whether they think they know more about it than you, there's always little bits of knowledge. And Robert Osfield that we spoke about earlier, he's been really quite transformational. That he just some really key advice in preparing for long races and pacing long races, and sometimes just as a good reality check of 17-hour pace for the West Ham Way isn't appropriate for the first 30 kilometres.
Robert is somebody that I know from when I first started ultra running as well, Neil, and I've not spoken to him for a long time, so please give him my regards if you are. I remember my big thing that I remember about Robert. Now, a lot of people listening, I would know Robert's name. He's done some amazing things. Was his attention to detail as far as data was concerned. Yeah. He was like a forerunner of the use of data and applying it to the methodology of his approach to ultra running, more so than anybody that I think I've ever met since either. And so he was like an early adopter, as I say. So what a source to have at your fingertips to pick his brain, because I'd imagine he would have known how many grams of carbs that he had.
He's able to look at your 10K time and tell you what you should be able to run the West Ham Way race in. Should, yes, if you do everything else right. And his kind of philosophy on even effort. Initially, I kind of had my own ideas after doing a couple of 50-mile ultras. I had my own ideas of and having failed at the West Ham Way race once, I had some ideas of my own as to how I could achieve it in future, which Robert basically told me were complete bollocks, and told me how I should do it. So last year's West Ham Way race, I followed his strategy of that even effort running to the letter, and lo and behold, it works. So it's been pretty instrumental for me in in tackling really stupid things.
Let's get to really stupid things, or really inspirational things, depending on what lens you look through. The Robroyway FKT. Yep. So Robroyway will pass quite near where you live.
Yep.
Yeah. So in terms of that FKT and thinking about making an attempt for that, when was that? Was that another one that was hatched in the pub?
A little bit, yeah. So when I was road running, we lived in Ayrshire, and we used to come to Trossachs for holidays quite frequently with the kids. It was an area that I knew quite well from bike racing, so we used to come over and explore. And every year we came over, I would run from Aberfoyle over the Menteiths to Callander and get picked up at the other end, which was about 9 or 10 miles. And it was the first real trail running I'd done, and it was the first real point-to-point running that I'd done. And at the time, I just assumed that the Robroyway went from Aberfoyle to Callander. And then subsequently, we moved to Callander. And then eventually 2 years ago, moved to Strathire. And it was when we moved to Strathire and saw signs for the Robroyway that I suddenly realised that it was a bit more than just Aberfoyle to Callander. So started looking at it and wondered, I wonder if anybody's run it before. And I found the route on the FKT website. Somebody had uploaded the route but not done a run. But that was in 2022. So I'd just failed at the West Hill Way race that year, and was planning to do West Hill Way race in 2023. So it had been something that had been starting to brew through that winter of 22 into 23, but knowing I couldn't really do anything about it that next year. And in, I think, July or August last year, a guy called Christian Delacour, who he went out and did the 79-mile route and set a time. Excuse me, I think he was 16 hours and 30 something minutes. And I looked at his run on Strava and I thought, I could do that. That's within the ballpark of what's achievable for me. So it had been my plan to have a go at that this year. And with quite a lot of stuff going on with my work post-COVID, was starting to get a lot busier in terms of events, and with quite a lot of family things happening this year. So I deliberately wasn't going to do a lot of racing this year. So I thought I'm gonna have that as my goal, so that I've got something to focus on. But before I could really focus on it too much, Paul Cymbalista went out and did it in under 14 hours, unsupported, in March this year. And when I saw the name, I thought, I know that name. And I looked up last year's West Hill Way race results and saw that he beat me by 2 hours, and realised that time wasn't achievable. So it was Mike Dillon's suggestion that, we would just call the 79-mile route the fun run, and I'd have to do the full route with the extension out to Amelry at 97 miles. So that was the initial plan, hatched into something a little bit dafter, to keep it within the realms of possibility.
And it was the Drymen Pitlochry direction.
Yeah. So Paul did Pitlochry to Drymen.
Okay.
Christian did Drymen to Pitlochry. So I did Drymen to Pitlochry, because there's a chip shop in Pitlochry. So if we timed the start correctly and I ran it in the right time, I'd be able to get a chippy afterwards.
There's a couple of chip shops in Pitlochry.
Yeah, I didn't get to see them when I finished.
Okay, that's
I
okay.
had my people go and do that for me.
Yeah, when you've got through that distance, you've got people. Definitely, we'll come to people. We'll come to people. What did it? You've done the West Highland Way race, so you've got 90 plus miles in your legs there already. You know what that feels like. But what about in your head switching it from 79 to 97? Did that faze you at all?
Not really, because I don't think preparing for that is any. So from a preparation point of view, it didn't really worry me, because I think if you're preparing for a 79-mile race, you're not doing anything different to preparing for a 100-mile race. Logistically, it required a bit more input, but like you say, I knew I could run for that kind of length of time. So no, that didn't really faze me too much. It was more just a case of getting out there and having a look at the extended route and where that went, and getting the recce's done.
Recce's. Did you get your foot on the hook? Did you get your foot on the whole route before?
Yes. So I think the only bits that I didn't run this year, but I had run at the back end of last year, was the section not far out of Cullen to Artalnig, to the hotel there. I'd done that section back in September last year. We went out and did a 50k loop around there, so I knew that section anyway. But in the build-up, went out and ran every part of the route, which is just as well, because the signposts in some places are less than optimal. Particularly that Amel-Ree loop is unsigned. It's wild country with nothing. So
did you have it on your watch? Did you to save time?
I didn't know. I really struggle with watch nav. It just something doesn't click in my head with it. I start to question: is the arrow pointing the way it should be when I'm holding my watch up, or is it when the watch is at your side? How do you know which wrist my watch is on? So I don't trust that. So no, I knew from Aberfoyle to Cullen very well, from because that's our stomping ground here. I went out and ran Drymen to Drymen to Callendar, actually, as a training run to get to know that bit, and just used the OS app to make sure I was making all the right turns. Myself and my wife Anna, we did an Aberfeldy to Pitlochry out and back as a run to see that section, and that's really nicely signed because it doesn't rain in that part of the world, so the signs don't rot and fall over. And Mike and myself did a run. Mike dropped me in Artalnig, and I ran from there out to Amel-Ree. He parked the car in Aberfeldy and ran back out the route and met me in Amel-Ree. So we managed to do that as a single car. I think it was 57k for me, recce. So that got the big part done. And then it was just from memory of, I know where I'm going at these various points.
You should say, for people listening in from Aberfeldy and Pitlochry, yes, Neil did say it doesn't rain. It doesn't rain as much.
That's a relative term to the Trossachs.
Yes. So. Yes. People are now going, what did he say? So you've mentioned a few names there. Let's talk about the support crew involved in planning this. And logistically, you I think from what you've said so far, Neil, there's a tight group of people that you support them, they support you. Egg on, as Steve said. But bringing that together before the start of your attempt, which we should remind people was only 12 days ago.
Yeah.
And the fact that you're able to sit here and talk articulately to us is quite an achievement in itself. So thank you for that. But bringing that support crew together, do you want to say a bit about that and who was involved and what they did?
Yeah. So I think, my son he wasn't involved in the support, but he's taught me a valuable word that would apply. So my wife Anna was kind of crew chief. She was in charge on the day, as she was in West Ham Way last year. My son has joined the army this year, and one of the words that they use is you've been voluntold. So it's when you've been told that you've volunteered to do something. So my wife was voluntold that she was going to be in charge of support. And at that, I was encouraged to maybe get people together and explain what I needed them to do rather than just expect everyone to turn up on the day. So my wife, Anna, was driving support from Killin onwards and took us to the start as well. So myself, we picked up Mike Dillon in Callendar. He left his car there in the meadows there, and we drove to the start in Drymen. Mike ran that first 33 kilometres to Callendar with me as support, and then I'd left a bag with water and food, essentially a drop bag in Mike's car. So when I got to Callendar, I was able to top up with supplies, and then head home essentially. Then my next two support runners were both Strathire guys. So Craig Hetherington, who's got 2 West Ham Way finishes the last couple of years, he ran down the side of Loch Lubnig to meet me at the Strathire cabins. So I had 6 or 7 kilometres on my own, and I was coming up to Strathire cabins in the twilight, in the dawn light where it was still a bit funny light, and thought, I can see somebody running. What's somebody doing out running at this time in the morning? So we'd started at 1 o'clock, and so I was thinking that some weirdos out at 5 o'clock in the morning out for a run. And it was when I got there I realised that it was, a weirdo that was there for me. So Craig picked me up there. I'd left a drop bag on our back garden gate because the route goes that close to the back of the house. So I'd left a drop bag there. And then Robert met us at More 84 and the three of us ran up to the top of the zigzags at Loch Ernhead. So Craig ran as far as Killin, and that was where Anna was waiting for me with the car, and my next support runner, John Lovegrove. So he's a Strathire runner, and another one. Well, he was a dafty before he met us. He'd done plenty of ultras, but yeah, he's been encouraged to do even more stupid things now. So John ran with me that first kind of wild leg from Killin down to the side of Loch Tay, and by that stage Mike had got home, had about an hour's sleep, and then picked up Scott Denny and Ali Morrison and come out to meet us on Loch Tay side. And another one of our group, Liz Maxwell and her husband Jean, had come out for the day out. So they met us at various points with cans of Coke and biscuits and extra water in various places. So we had a little 3-car convoy moving on from there, and regular fresh support runners. So nobody got too bored of my chats, and I didn't get too bored of anybody else's chat on the way. So it ended up being quite a good little group, and actually quite a lot of people involved in doing it.
Which is brilliant though to have that, because you then got the variety of chat and engagement and seeing people.
Yeah, and it's a fun day out with friends. It's amazing. I at the West Ham Way race, the first year I did it, I had been aiming to do a time where I wouldn't have a support runner, but I got to Ultrarunning having completely misjudged all of my pacing and torn my legs to pieces and feet, and so had a support runner from there because I'd slowed down that much. And I just remember just the lift that gives you of having the friendly face of the static support, but then also just company with you who's not just overtaking you or you're passing them, but just having that friendly face was really powerful. So it did turn the FKT attempt into just a good fun day out with friends, really,
Brilliant. A good day with your pals.
Exactly.
Can you whack it?
Yeah. And as Mike said, they all quite enjoy watching me suffer as well. So
there's
a degree of entertainment for them in it.
Yeah. I love that description of your pal. He was a dafty before he met us. That's a great testimony.
Yeah.
I love that. We spoke with Tom Rainey recently. He set an FKT on the Cape Wrath Trail.
Right.
And he was the first person that I remember talking so brilliantly about putting people at places depending on what they bring to it, like their character, their chat, their engagement. Somebody that's going to just yap nonstop, like me probably, and tell rubbish jokes and all that sort of stuff. But he had, I think he used the term, strategically placed them on the route.
Okay.
Had you planned it that way, or just?
No, to be honest, it was more logistical. It was things that made it a little bit easier for whoever the support runner was.
Yeah.
So it was more, it was their individual circumstances, or rather than anything else. I think any of them, I would have been happy to have had any of them at any point of the run.
Okay.
And kind of a bit above and beyond, I hadn't planned originally on having any support until Culin. So, because obviously it's early in the morning, but Mike volunteered. He said, I'll come out and do the early part with you. And Craig again just said, well, I'll run down and meet you and get an early start. So, they kind of went above and beyond what my requirements were and gave that little bit extra. So no, there was no. It was what made sense from a logistical point of view rather than strategic.
Okay, cool.
What a merry band you had roped in, by the way. And I'm sure that it would have all add to that term that you used, like just a broadie out with your pals.
Yeah.
And all the crack and the memories that would have ensued as well. I also love the fact that the main part that they loved was watching you suffer. Bastards.
Yeah.
So you said, Neil, that it was a 1 a.m. start at Drymen.
Yeah.
And that was all designed around getting to the chip shop closing time in Pitlochry.
Yeah.
Was that was that the race?
I was kind of targeting that sub 20 hours, so I knew that the chippy would close at 9 o'clock. So you've got to get in under 20 hours to get that done.
Listen, it's our kind of target. Maybe there's some ultra races could base their whole time limit on the closure of a chippy, a takeaway, a pub, some kind of reward that's going to motivate the participants to chase
and
that
I think it's
carrot on a stick.
That way, it only takes up one day.
Yeah.
I quite like that about the West Highway race. The start time means that if you're of a certain speed, you're only going through one night time. You don't have a second night of misery. Kudos to the guys that do, because that just looks horrendous to me.
Yes. Misery. There would have been, I imagine, a few wee dips.
Yeah. It was funny. So my West Highway race last year was almost incident free. It was a 97-mile race. There was misery and there was hard times, but everything went exceptionally well. I didn't fall. I didn't have gut issues. It was warm. I didn't have huge overheating issues. The closest that I came to a real problem was when one of my support crew offered me a choice of flavours of Calippo at Glencoe. And I tripped over a rock because I couldn't look where I was going and decide what flavour I wanted. That was the closest to it going wrong that it went. So I kind of had this really surreally positive experience. So I was due some karma in this.
I'm just going to come in there. You finished the 2023 West Highland Way in just a 20 hours and some change in 14 spots. So it sounded like, well, on paper it looks like that was one of those stars align races.
It very much did, which was partly why I didn't race it this year was because if I raced it this year, how was I going to do better? You know.
Yep, get that.
Yeah,
get that. Yep.
Also, doing it in that time and that placing in the West Highland race gives a insight to the caliber of the athlete that you are, Neil, because that's a brilliant return. Stars aligning or not, that's a brilliant shift. Did you say, was Anna, your wife, the chief crew in the West Highland race too?
Yes. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I'm going to say right now, giving kudos to Anna, to have a choice of calipos to make is quite astonishing. Most folks just grab a box of orange.
But it was actually it was Anna's colleague Emily who had the choice of ice lollies, and they were walking with me through the checkpoints and doing all my changeovers of kit and everything on the move. And it was Anna that brought the situation back. She just said quite sternly to Emily, just give him an ice lolly. He can't make difficult decisions just now. So, you know, that was, she brought it back and got it straight.
Well, kudos to them both. To Emily for bringing the selection and Anna for taking control of that situation and getting you on your way. Calipos are the way to go, by the way.
It was most welcome at that point on the race last year because it was so warm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On that, 1 o'clock start this year on the Rob Roy FKT. Weather conditions that day?
It had been quite wet on the Saturday evening, so it was quite misty. It was almost perfect temperature, 12, 13 degrees, but very wet in terms of undergrowth. So we got pretty soaked through actually just from that in the early part. And then the rest of the day was really quite temperate. When the sun came out from behind the clouds, it was coming up to near 20 degrees. Behind the clouds, 15, 16. So it was remarkably lucky weather-wise for it. We definitely got the pick of it.
Yeah, and with that, sorry, I'm jumping a wee bit, but with that, getting wet in the morning, that early morning stuff, did you change your gear accordingly, or had you been prepared for that wetness?
I did, yeah. So I had we didn't have rain falling, but I had my jacket with me. I started off in a long sleeve, anticipating it being a little bit cooler. And I, similar to West Highland Way race last year, I had changes of t-shirt through the day. As much for the pacers' sake as mine, because they weren't very pleasant after 3 or 4 hours running. So, but that was the only change of kit. Same socks and shoes the whole way. I think if I can do the whole thing without breaking the seal on the feet, then all the better.
I've become a bit obsessed with feet, man. By that, I'm talking about preparation of a run of this distance, of an ultra marathon. How do you prep your feet? Before you put your socks and shoes on to line up at 1 o'clock in the morning, what do you do to your feet?
Nothing actually.
Wow.
I don't do anything. I've got a shoe and sock combo that works for me. And so West Highland Way race last year, when I was properly prepared structurally, let's say, as well as aerobically, my feet were not a problem in the whole race. 1 pair of shoes, 1 pair of socks. The only problem was afterwards. So I've got very high arches, and when I got to Fort William, my feet were completely flat because the muscles had just fatigued so much. But from a toes point of view, blisters, I was absolutely fine. In the robroyway, I hadn't done the strength and conditioning work that I should have done this year. I'd neglected that, and as a result, my IT bands were tight, so my knees got sore. So I was changing my running to accommodate that. and subsequently did a fair bit of toe and blister damage, mostly toes. But yeah, that was a lack of structural preparation rather than anything on my feet. So I don't really do anything.
Can you say a bit about your sock and shoe combo? What's your choice?
Oh crikey, I can't remember what the brand of sock is. I can't remember the name of them, but they're very thin, single skin sock. I tend to get blisters from twin skin socks, bizarrely. So I like a thin sock, and I wore Salomon Ultra Glide 2s, which I bought. The first pair I bought the week before last year's West Hill Way race. Did 20k in them the week leading up to it, and ran in a brand new pair of shoes that I'd never used before.
Wow.
Which, you know, is not the received wisdom way of doing things, but the fit, they felt comfortable in the shop. The fit felt good. I found they've got the right level of cushioning versus ground feel, plenty of room, and the fact that I never have to bend over and tie my laces is worth more than the time you would lose by stopping and tying your laces. It's more the bending over bit that you're having to do that late on. So the speed laces I really, really enjoy.
I've never experienced. I've seen them. I've never had them. But listen, they're calling this season the danger zone, and a lot of people enter the danger zone in different ways. And wearing a brand new pair of shoes on the race day, then that's cool, man. It worked in your favour. So it worked in your favour.
Yeah.
We were talking about highs and lows. Can we go back to that? People want to know the suffering, don't they?
Yeah. So there was two suffer points. One was really, really bad diarrhea. So from 40k, and it was, at first I thought it was just, you know, why you carry the emergency toilet roll in an ultra. You know, just your guts getting churned up. But it was a 10 times in 30k kind of churned up guts. It was one of those ones where your body has got something in it that it really doesn't want to be in there. So that was quite unpleasant, running off into the trees pretty frequently in that kind of 40 to 70 kilometer stretch. And it was almost, if I ate something solid, as soon as I ate that solid food, it was within 2 or 3 minutes, my stomach was churning and I was off into the bushes. So got some Imodium at the first kind of static checkpoint with the crew. And I was pretty much on liquid fuel from then on in, which was a big concern for me. You know, for that length of time, I really wasn't sure how I would manage energy-wise on that, because that was quite different to what I'd done before. So, yeah, that 30-40k stretch there was, I was questioning whether I was going to make it. Really, I really didn't think. I thought energy-wise, I was going to get into some serious difficulty with that. So that was pretty low. I think it was probably as unpleasant for the support runners as it was for me. But yeah, that was pretty low. But the Imodium did its job, and I got back out there and was fine from a guts point of view from then on in. But I wasn't prepared to risk, you know, substantial solids. So I was on Torque Energy drink regularly. Salt and vinegar McCoys was about the most I ate in terms of solids, and jelly sweets. That was as much solid as I ate the rest of the way, and regular cans of Coke from the support crew as well.
Which adds a whole new level to what you actually achieved, you know, going through that type of adversity.
Yeah, and I think you learn more from races that go wrong than you do you learn to repeat what you did in a race that went well, but you learn about how you can, I think races that go 100% well are probably few. I've not done that many ultras to be able to form a real opinion on it, but I would imagine you probably have more bad ones than good ones.
Have you sussed out what turned your stomach?
I think so. I used a very old jar of ground coffee because I was making myself a cup of coffee about 11 o'clock the night before, and I didn't want to put the bean grinder on. So we were saying horribly middle class. I didn't want to put the bean grinder on because obviously it would wake everybody up. So I used a jar which has probably been there since before we got the bean grinder, which was Christmas. And that's the only thing I can think that it would have been was that. So yeah, very middle class upset stomach.
I'm laughing because I grind beans as well, obviously, John. Yeah. And if I'm going out for an early Sunday morning run, I have to grind beans the night before so that I've got.
Yeah, Neil will do that next time. Neil will do that next time.
Night before is good. 6 months before is less good.
Yes, yeah. But it's like vibrates the hell house.
Yeah.
Also, though, a serious point about having diarrhea. When you're shitting that amount, you're saying there's a number of visits to the trees, and it totally can deplete every bit of energy you've got.
Yeah.
So, how long did it take to get back going?
It was probably I didn't start to feel good again until from an energy point of view, probably until we come back down to Loch Tay side was when I started to turn round from an energy point of view. And again, I think that was that little unexpected crew meet at our Talnaig. Yeah. I got a can of Coke there, some ginger biscuits just to kind of try and settle me. But getting down onto the road there, I started to feel good again. And it was at that point where, it started to feel a bit more possible then. I think that whole leg from Culin, I don't know if you know that part there, but it climbs about 600 meters in probably only 10k. So and I'd forgotten when you get to the top of the road to the reservoir, in my head, that was a bit I hadn't done this year. And when I got there, in my head, you got to the reservoir and then you started to drop back down. But the reality is that you start twisting around all the hills, and you've gone from Keep Loch Tay on your left, all of a sudden you're running up a climb and you're going, that's Loch Tay on my right. This path's taking me away from where I want to go. So that was quite demoralizing there, that low point energy wise, and twice the length of climb that I had remembered. And that was the point, whether that was part of it, but that was when my knees started to get really sore as well, just through that lack of conditioning. So I had the aerobic fitness, but I didn't have the conditioning. So again, it was getting down to the loch side and knowing that there was a massage gun in the car that could start to fix that problem as well. That was when I started to get that little, it's that combination of actual energy and feeling better psychologically that turned it around quite a bit.
So are you around about sort of Kenmore, Aberfeldy at this point?
Yeah, so you're probably at our Talnaig, you're about halfway along Loch Tay.
Mm-hmm. And then you turn right up Glen Almond.
So you go about 5k along the South Loch Tay road.
Yeah.
From Ardenaig to our Talnaig.
Yeah.
And that was the checkpoint there was a little lay-by on the side of the road where we managed to get everybody parked. And that's where it turns right. And you're probably about, it's the fun run route is 25k from from our Talnaig to Aberfeldy along there. So you're probably 10-12k to Kenmore from there, but it turns right and you actually climb up around the back of Ben Chauncey. Yeah. And you're at the source of the River Almond, so you're in Smag Glen then.
Yeah. I was up there on Sunday last week.
Yeah, so the fun fact up there was in that area, somewhere just when you turn off Loch Tay, is where they filmed the Holy Hand Grenade scene in Monty Python and the Holy Grail. So there's an old mine up there, which is where they filmed that scene.
There you go.
Never knew that.
That's up there. But it's that you really feel it's wild. Feels really wild and remote up there. It's a worrying place for crew because I'd rented a GPS tracker, and it requires a phone signal. So you get up off the side of Loch Tay, and there's no phone signal from there until Glenquaich. So there's a good 2 hours of just where the crew doesn't know where you are, and you're just in this wilderness up there. But it's quite stunning. You're in Smag Glen. All of Smag Glen is beautiful, but that bit's quite remote.
Yeah, I love it up there. It's I don't know how far are you into the endeavour by though. Like I'm thinking when you're starting to smell the chips.
So you turn off to go up off Loch Tay. You're 90k in then.
90k in.
So which sounds like a lot, but you've still got 67 to go, 65 to go.
Okay.
At that point, so you've got a good length ultra to go still there.
And how was your weather? That's something that
it was almost ideal. It was warm when the sun came out, but there was a good breeze. There was the occasional little spit of rain, but it was generally really good. We couldn't have asked for. I think we got the good weather, and then the Devil on Saturday got the payback for it.
It's not called the Devil for nothing.
No,
the Devil of the Highland.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. When we spoke about getting there before the chip shop closes, was 20 hours your aim? I know you said about your the West Highland Way the year before. How could you better that experience? But is there a lot more elevation in this than there is in the West Highland Way?
No, it's actually slightly less, I think.
Is it?
About 500 metres less. Yeah, it's not quite the same elevation. I think I'd hoped to go faster than I did. I'd hoped to be in the 18 to 19 hour mark.
Okay.
But I think I wanted to be under 20. Under 20 was the main aim, was to get round it under that. And it was a little bit for me, a little bit proof of concept that I can run 97 miles in under 20 hours, which gives me that little bit of a target for next year's West Highland Way race that I can go for that, and there's things I'll need to do to achieve that, but it's proof of concept that I can cover 97 miles on my feet off road, on majority off roads in that time. So
well, if you want, fingers crossed, if you go back, you don't get the stomach issues on the West Highland Way race. You have a similar day that you had previously, but you're talking about wanting to go sub 20. Oh, you scalped that, man. 19 hours, 21 minutes and 57 seconds for an FKT. That's quite phenomenal. You must be really delighted with that. Given the circumstances, although you wanted between 18 and 19, given the circumstances on the day, that's a fantastic result, isn't it?
Yeah, I was a little bit sceptical whether when I got to that leg out to Amory, that was the point. I was starting to think I'd kind of given up all hope of hitting that time at that point, and I didn't really look at my watch at all before then, so I didn't really have much concept of it, but I knew I wasn't performing as I'd hoped. But it was when I got to Amory, and I think it was around about 14-hour mark to Amelry, and I knew from there it's about a marathon to the finish. That was the point. It was 14 and a half hours there. I thought maybe if it all goes okay, it's achievable now. And that definitely gives you a bit of a spur on to, you mentioned that snip of home. For the Western Way race last year was Glencoe for me, because the year before that was where I pulled out. So as soon as I got down that ski road, I knew I was finishing. So I was able to press on, and I think, that leg from Amelry was, the belief was building all the way from there, and definitely when I got down, coming down into Aberfeldy, it was more than just a belief that I was going to do it. It was actually a realization that I could do a pretty handy time as well.
Do you finish with a smile?
I never finished. I'm really bad when I'm racing to be super focused. So I used to really annoy people in cyclocross races. So you'd be doing 10 laps of a circuit, and I wasn't even acknowledging people that were cheering me on because I was so laser focused. So there was an internal smile, but there was a bit of laughing in the last few kilometers in towards the finish, partly because when you cross the A9 and then you drop down into Aberfeldy and you cross we were talking about wobbly bridges before. There's a pedestrian suspension bridge, and just before we come down to that, there's a little narrow entrance. It's a narrow path, and there was a group of walkers walking up, and they were about to go in there, and John, who was one of the three guys running with me then, said to walkers, could they stop and let us through? And I just overheard one of the group said, they were Australian. I'll not try the accent, but they just said, that guy looks a bit beat up, doesn't he? So there was a bit of smiling then, but then you cross the suspension bridge and climb up to the town, and I really wanted to run to the finish, so I was digging pretty deep to keep a run going. So there was grimacing. I need to look back at the photos and see if there was a hint of a smile, but there was grimacing, and then using the War Memorial for support, and then sat down on a bench for about an hour afterwards. So I said earlier, I'm pretty good at getting everything out on race day. I'm usually pretty good at making medical professionals a little bit concerned at finish lines. So yeah, I don't know that I was smiling, but inside I was smiling. I knew I'd done it, and I was pretty chuffed with myself. But I don't think there was smiling.
You'll be smiling tonight, so
yeah,
that's good.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's been smiling ever since.
Yeah,
I think we've actually submitted our own FKT on the fastest known time website. I'm not going to tell you what it is, Neil, just because we've got tripwires and stuff like that on it now. So we've built a few insurmountable walls physically so that other people can't do it.
Snipers and
drones and all that.
Yeah, we've got like motion detector cameras along the way. We know when people are on it. But anyway, it was just to direct listeners to the FKT website where you've recorded your attempt and you've got a really good write up of it, along with some fantastic photographs that your support crew has been capturing along the way. Some of the pain is etched on your face. It's clear to see that there was definite suffering, but it doesn't look all suffering. It looks like plenty of light-hearted moments in there as well. Definitely. Now, you've already mentioned about your trainers. We like to speak about kit and favourite bits of kit. Have you got a particular go-to bit of kit that you would recommend or say is my essential?
I think the thing that's been integral to me in the last year or so ultra running has been, I got a Coros watch, which is fantastic for battery life, but the big thing compared to my previous watches that I've had that it does is it does records power. So coming from a cycling background, power measurement was something when I was at university we were doing quite a lot of research in, and it was pretty new at the time. And worked with the likes of Peter Keane, who was the kind of guy behind the renaissance of the GB cycling team on a lot of power meter training and stuff. So power is something that's always been interesting to me from a training and racing point of view. So when I saw I could get it on a watch, it's been something I've used as a pacing strategy. Mm-hmm. So I can set a power alarm. So the watch will vibrate as a warning when I go above a certain power output. So it's measuring your speeds and the gradient and knowing your weight and giving an estimation of your power output. And by doing that, rather than wait till my heart rate reaches a certain level, so your heart rate is reacting to what you're doing.
Yeah.
Whereas power is actually telling you what you are doing. So that's been able to prevent me from doing those little spikes where you're going into that more carb hungry pace. Mm-hmm. The little spikes that are doing that little bit more muscle damage. And it helps you to even out effort over flat climbing, descending. So that's been really useful to me, and I've used that for from the West Ham Way race last year onwards in any ultras that I've done. I've used that and just fine-tuned that power alarm to the distance.
Suppose going back to what we mentioned earlier with Robert and his data and things, and that equal effort or consistent effort rather than doing out of the traps like a a greyhound.
I had worked out that descending is what was doing the damage to me in the early ultras that I did. Mm-hmm. So descending is what was giving me the muscle pain, which makes the last part so much more difficult. So I kind of hypothesized to Robert that I when I did the Opal Ultra the second time, I actually went quite hard on the climbs, and then took the descents really steadily. So I went quite slowly down the descents to avoid doing the muscle damage, and that it kind of worked to an extent. But Robert said, no, you need to train to run downhill fast, and even your effort out so that a climb is the same effort as the flat, and the descending where there's free speeds, you're moving quickly, so you're gaining time back. So that even effort thing, mm-hmm. When you try it sounds counterintuitive that essentially you walk up the climbs and then try and make the time back on the descents. But it actually, from a durability point of view, it really certainly works for me in terms of being able to even out that effort over the race.
Oh, thank you for that. Food for thought. I think there'll be people musing that themselves and other people who have already do exactly that as well. But the Coros watch has got that metric. And we aren't sponsored by anybody, are we, John? So we can say get touring about it, especially if they're on special.
Definitely. And Coros, if you're listening in, you want to hear a chat, just drop us a line.
Some equipment testing reviews,
Yeah. We've tried that one. We're no like DC Rainmaker here. the reviews that take about 4 hours to read.
Yeah.
Okay. So a successful conclusion to what sounds like it's not just been an adventure for you, but you've taken a few people, and I know you've already spoken about how already the devil last weekend. I think you had some of your support team running that.
So I was helping out Mike and a couple of girls, Liz and Louise from our group were running that as well, and then I'm doing starting to pay back the debt of support to my wife. She's running the Loch Ness 24 in just over a week's time. So
good luck, Anna.
Yeah, I think it sounds completely mental running a lapped 24-hour race. I can totally get behind point to point where you're going somewhere, but I think that lapped ultra, I think, just sounds way tougher. I think from a psychological point of view, I think it would be harder than then at least in a distance race you can have some influence on how long it takes you. Whereas a 24-hour race takes you 24 hours, whether you want it to or not.
Yeah, it sounds like you've talked yourself into giving it a bash to me.
I think I'll see how next weekend goes and see whether I fancy it then.
Yeah, you can do the observations and findings report.
Yes,
it can also be a tougher gig on the other side of the tape as well, but equally rewarding as well, because there'll be other people there too. Then you're meeting with them and catching up with them.
Yeah, and that's one of the fun things we did support for a Dutch runner, Joran Mika, who put out an appeal on the West Ham Way Race Facebook page of looking for crew. So we adopted him as a happy little tree this year.
Brilliant.
And did his support crew, and there's a real camaraderie, because you tend to be at checkpoints at the same time as other crews, and there's that little bit of the I guess it's that fighter pilot thing of it's hours and hours of boredom followed by brief moments of absolute terror. I think support crew is a bit like that. You're sitting around waiting for something to happen, then it all happens, and then it's back to normality for a little while.
The positive for doing that at a lapped event is that you didn't also have to drive, so you can partake in a couple of beers just to pass the time with camaraderie.
I did suggest to Anna that the challenge could be if I try and drink a bottle of beer for every lap that she does, but then there's that realization that I have to drive home as well.
There is that.
So
there is that. True. And what about running wise for you, Neil? Have you got any races booked? Have you got anything else planned?
I don't have anything booked for the. Well, sorry, that I tell a lie. I'm entered in the Ben Nevis race.
Okay, brilliant.
Oh, you forget about that.
Yeah, it's one of the two hill races that I try and do every year. Pitlochry, because obviously it's on the doorstep, and Ben Nevis. So Nix and Damien Foster, who run offbeat bikes up in Fort William, they're one of my customers, and since they knew I was running, they just did the same thing as got me doing ultras. They just applied the pressure until I did the Ben Nevis race as well. So I've run that in the last 2 years. And again, it's a bit like the ultras. There's something about that race that's just, you wonder why they're allowed to do it when you're on the course. It's so wild. So doing that next month, excuse me, and then the rest of the season, I don't really have anything planned. I may well do another ultra this winter, but I'm going to put my name in for West Ham Way Race again next year. So if I get in the ballot for that, then I've got a bit of a mission for that for 2025.
Fire in the belly,
and focus on that strength and conditioning.
Absolutely, yeah. So I went to yoga on Tuesday night. So the journey has started, and I need to. I'm at an age now where I need to start lifting big bits of metal to keep myself fit and healthy, as well as just go running.
Yeah,
beautiful, isn't it? Spoke. Okay. Well, we're getting to the end of our chat. We always ask a couple of really important questions towards the end, Neil, and the first one is, now, where are you from? Where's your home tune?
It's kind of I guess you'd say it's complicated. So I was born in Durham. I lived very briefly in Durham. I spent until I was 14 living in Gourock, and then until I was 18 living in Ayrshire. Then was in Edinburgh for 6 years. Then lived in the Peak District for 5 years after that, and then back up in Ayrshire, and then back down here. So yeah, I've lived a lot of places. So yeah, I don't really feel that I've got a where I'm from as such.
However, it gives you plenty of options for your dialect dictionary word, which is good. Music to our ears.
So for dialect dictionary, I've worked for a Dutch company for the last 7 years, and prior to working for them, I was a customer of theirs for 10 years. So I kind of feel like I've worked for them for 17 years, which is so 7 years is the longest I've done, a single thing like that. So so my dialect word is actually a Dutch word, and it's lekker, which is L-E-K-K-E-R, and the direct translation is tasty. So the kind of, but it's in the same way as tasty would be a slang word here for something that's cool or nice, or that was a tasty run, So that lekker man is that was really cool, that was really good. Or they would say, if they've had a nice coffee, it's a lekker bucky, would be what they would say. So that's my dialect word.
John,
I love that.
have we had a South African person come on and give us that before? But with different context.
Would that be Carla?
Afrikaans and Dutch.
Yeah. It just rings a bell, but I think the use of it was different, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
So,
yeah,
lekker.
Lekker.
Let's get the Dutch submissions in.
Let's do it.
And hopefully your song choice, which is coming up next, is that Dutch one for the Euros that they've all been going left and right. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah, at staff get-togethers, we do get exposed to some Dutch oompa Europop
party tunes.
It is quite something. The whole UK crew just kind of sit there in bewilderment, wondering what on earth is going on.
I love that. Team meeting. Let's go. Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
So, well, let's find out. That was a bit of a drum roll moment there.
Yeah. So yeah, my song choice, it's a little bit inspired by the Robroyway. So it's Losing Old Ricky by Jim Malcolm. But it's also it's a bit of an ultra running song. The song is about him, heading home from working in Edinburgh. So he's on a drive, but he's not just heading up the motorway back home. He's going the scenic route. So I think it's linked to the Robroyway because he drives through Amalree and Smag Glen, which obviously was the extension to make the long route. But it's also a bit of a, he's taking the long way home and shaking off the shackles of work and the pressures of everything like that. So I think it's quite a good ultra running song in its feeling. It's achieving this. He's achieving the same things in his long drive, taking the scenic route, enjoying life, enjoying the outdoors, and shaking off all the pressures of life.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for suggesting that. I know the song. It's a song that tells the story. We name places. It's also a bit like Kenneth McKellar does it with the West Highland Way. He talks us through that. It's a bit like Johnny Cash with 40 Shades of Green. It's one of them. It lifts names places. Brilliant. If memory serves me right, there's a line that says "skating into Angus."
Yeah.
So it's full of words like that.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Well, it's now added to the La Buff Buff playlist Volume 8 we're on now, by the way, Neil. I know you're not a podcast listener, but if you're a music listener...
I will be now, yeah.
There you go.
You'll be a podcast listener now. Yeah. Neil's never listened to a podcast in his life.
Yeah, well, I need something for those in-between lap moments.
Nothing like listening to your own voice. It's fantastic.
It is.
Just put it on repeat, get some stats up for us on our analytics at the same time.
Tell everybody else.
Tell everyone. Yeah. Absolutely. So it's on. So thank you for that. It's, I don't know the song, so I look forward to listening to it very soon. Actually, we'll be playing out on it. Hang fire for that one. Yeah.
Brilliant. FKTs are a thing. We spoke to a few people about FKTs, and over the course of the seasons that we've been going. But it always fascinates me that somebody has the same passion that we do for doing these daft things, and I love it. And I love the story you've given us of your background. I love this. I love the passion you speak about your pals with, which is absolutely fantastic. And there's that community of everybody helping, looking after each other. Thank you for being so open and honest about your, I was going to say warts and all, but I'm going to call it guts, guts and all.
Guts and all, yeah.
So thank you very much for that. I've thoroughly enjoyed. Did you get a bag of chips?
I got a smoked sausage supper.
Oh, yes.
So it's better than just a bag of chips. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
yeah, it was exactly what was needed.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for your time, Neil. I'll hand over to Stephen to say cheerio.
Thanks very much, Neil. It's been a really great wee conversation we've just had, and a lot of it was chiming, in terms of guys coming together and going for 0 to 5K, then all of a sudden they're running ultras. John and I have got, friend groups really similar, so it's really relatable. And your pal Mike, it was Mike who actually first got in touch with us and let us know that you were doing this, and etc. etc.
Yeah, I was voluntold.
Yes, that's exactly what you were doing. He also says you'll struggle to shut him up. Well,
he was right.
Yeah. We'll see about that, but I think that I wouldn't agree with Mike. So, Mike, if you're listening, and I hope you are, then we like people who didn't shut up, mate. So, yeah. So, good luck to whatever challenges lay up next. Anybody listening fancies a crack at Neil's FKT on the robroyway, then watch it for the tripwires.
Yeah, well, no, I think I'm very much. I think if anybody wants to have a crack, I'll be the first person to lend a hand. I think these challenges and FKTs, they're there to be broken. They're there to inspire somebody to have a go. It was without somebody having had a shot at it last year, it might have been pushed on and on. But I think for me, I had that motivation to get out there and do it before somebody really good did and made it unattainable. So I think it's there to be done. The challenge of the logistics has been worked out now. So if somebody wants to have a go, I'd be more than happy to help them out.
There's an offer.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you, Neil.
As we pointed out to Liz and Louise after they'd done the Devil on Saturday, there's no female record yet. So
there for the taking. We've got plenty female listeners, plenty.
Yeah.
And about it.
So yeah, there might be a happy little tree gets that in the meantime, but we'll see if we can put pressure on some of them to have a go.
Brilliant. Well, Neil, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
No, you're more welcome.
Hopefully catch some miles with you soon as well.
Yeah.
Cheers, man.
Excellent. Thank you very much.